Hello, my name is Tom Main, and I am the head of school at Ridgefield Academy and the Landmark Preschools. Ridgefield Academy is a K through 8 school on West Mountain Road in Ridgefield, Connecticut. And the Landmark Preschools are exactly that, preschools, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, and 4-year-olds. And we have a campus here in Ridgefield on West Mountain Road. We have a campus in Westport, Connecticut, and we have a campus in Bedford, New York. The total enrollment is about 450 on these three campuses. I've been at the school. This is my 3rd year, but I was on the board for 10 years prior to that, and so I do know the school quite well at this point. I'm going to talk for a while about how we are managing COVID as an educational institution, and so I'm going to go all the way back to last spring and sort of move through to where we are right now. So everybody was talking about remote learning last spring, and I have a different term for it, crisis or emergency remote learning, because almost all of us were thrust into remote learning due to COVID so quickly, and no school had fully prepared for such an immersion, and so we spent last spring working really hard to develop a strong remote learning program, really for grades K through 8 and also for our preschool students. We're known for having a really good educational program for our preschool students. And while so much of their experience is social, as is the experience of every student, I think pre-K through college, we wanted to make sure that we provided a really good academic experience for every one of our kids. And so we spent the spring really polishing what we were able to do with our kids. And a month or so in, we had good schedules for screen time, which were developmentally different for our older kids versus our younger kids. For our older kids, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, we could have a full class schedule each and every day. Classes were a little shorter with breaks in between them than we would have here, because we didn't want kids to have 6 or 7 hours of screen time, but we were able to have a full schedule. And as kids got younger and younger, we had less screen time and more asynchronous activity. So activity that kids did when they weren't on the computer. But in the 4s and in kindergarten and in 1st grade and in the 3s, the teacher would get together with the kids for a meet in the morning and for story time and circle time, and we start teaching math and reading very young, and there would be short reading lessons and short math lessons. With our younger kids, we did a lot more one-on-one work or small group work, because we found that 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds really were much better at getting together with a small group of friends on a Zoom meeting or a Google Meet, and not, it's just very difficult to have 12 or 13 or 14 of them together in a class on the computer screen. Very easy to do with the 8th graders and the 7th graders and the 6th graders. As they get younger, it gets harder to do. So really, as we worked and perfected the program, we found that the older kids had much more synchronous time and were actively engaged in class discussions and class work on a very regular and routinized basis. And the routine for the younger kids was not as full in terms of the synchronous learning, but there was much more asynchronous learning. And if you think of 2-year-olds all the way to 14-year-olds, you can imagine that there's a continuum there. And for 2nd grade, it's one thing. For 3rd, it's another. For 5th, it's another. For 8th, it's another. But we really made the decision that good remote learning is not identical to good learning in the classroom. As a matter of fact, it's quite different when kids are at home. And so the way we work with kids, the kind of assignments that we give, the kind of discussions that we have to work in this remote setting. And so we had a long spring of remote learning, and a month or so in, it wasn't crisis remote learning anymore. It was real remote learning. We did a lot of surveying of our constituents. We wanted to know how families were experiencing this program. That was very important to us. We had no idea how long we were going to be in it, and so we knew that every 2 or 3 weeks we needed to survey people so we could evolve constantly. We wanted to know how people were experiencing the program, how kids and parents were experiencing the program. And so we got a lot of really good feedback. We were able to respond to that feedback. And the other thing that happened is there immediately sprang up this incredible wealth of resource. So school heads around the state were having meetings on a regular basis to share ideas and share problem-solving strategies, and division heads, lower school heads, and middle school heads, and directors of admission, and others were just, so many groups got together so quickly to share resources, ideas, and solutions, and we benefited tremendously from that, and are still benefiting from that. So we got to the end of the year and had this really cool graduation for our 8th graders on a field out back. We rented a 60-foot movie screen and then had everybody come in their cars and stay in their cars. So it was like a drive-in movie. And we had our students come to campus one at a time to give their graduation speeches, which are short 2-minute speeches. And then there were some other remarks, and we put the whole thing together to have a really nice graduation for the kids. And they showed up in cars, and there was a bag with their diploma in it, and snacks for the movie, and a blanket, and a sweatshirt, and a whole bunch of things. But it was a really nice ending to the year, and it was completely COVID safe, but it was also the opportunity for the kids to be in the same space, and they hadn't been in the same space and graduate. So instead of applause, there was horn honking and things like that. But it was a really good event. And then we sort of moved into the planning phase and started planning for the reopening this year, and had crafted by probably early August a long, thoughtful reopening plan that was focused on safety protocols, so that when we came back to campus, we had the opportunity to be the safest place that we could possibly be. We did not really have to entertain hybrid options. Schools are talking about being in session for 5 days, or being remote, or being hybrid, which means there's a cohort that's there for 2 days, and then there's a remote day and another cohort that comes to campus. That's basically to reduce density on campus. And we're fortunate that we have a small school and intentionally small classes, so that we did not have a density level that needed to be reduced. And so we were able to plan right from the start to have school 5 days a week for all of our kids. And this is our 12th week, and we've not had a day off yet. I need to knock wood absolutely every time I say that. But the planning for the year was focused on a couple of things. One, and I won't go into all of them because you can just talk forever, but all of the safety protocols. And there are so many of those, whether it's disinfecting or mask wearing or social distancing or training people to be contact tracers. The list goes on and on and on. And we've done all of that. And excuse me, I think we're really in extremely good shape in terms of how we've managed those situations that have popped up that we've needed to manage. The second thing we did is create a program that we call parallel remote learning, which we think is really important and has served us extremely well. And so from the very beginning, families have been able to decide to be here in person or to work remotely. But we wanted that remote learning experience to be really substantive and meaningful. And so we purchased 55-inch monitors for each classroom, and they've got a camera mounted on them. And so if a class has, let's say, 12 kids in it, and 9 are in the classroom, and 3 have opted to stay at home for a period of time and for different reasons, those 3 are what we call parallel remote learners, and their faces are on the screen, and the kids in the class and the teacher, they are seeing their faces and having conversations with them, and the kids that are at home, excuse me, are seeing the entire class and interacting with the class. And so you can walk into a classroom down the hall, a 5th grade classroom, or up the hill, a 2nd grade classroom, or out over in Westport, a 4-year-old classroom. And you'll see, 10 kids in the class and 2 at home, 8 kids in the class and 4 at home, sometimes all the kids in the class. But the kids that are at home are actively engaged in the work of the class. It's not a different experience. And so they can very easily toggle back and forth. Let's say a student has a family member that tests positive, and so that student is then a close contact of somebody that tested positive, and that student has to quarantine for 2 weeks. Well, you can stay really connected to your class, to your friends, to your teacher, and you won't miss a beat in terms of the academic program. We found that to be something that has really, really helped us here. We've got a number of families that have gone back and forth a little bit, and we've really been able to create a substantive experience so that families don't mind it. They're okay. Some families have had their kids out for the majority of the year. I think now on this campus, I think we've got about 250, 255 kids on this campus, and I think 35 or 40 of them are remote learners. I think the low point was probably about 20, the high point was probably about 50, and again, there are very different reasons. So in terms of planning for the year, we did a lot of work with safety protocols, and we did a lot of work with this parallel remote learning. The third thing we spent a lot of time with was just working with teachers to be ready for the year. Teachers have to do so much more in this environment. Not only is there more work, there are just all these new things to learn, whether it's different types of software or different kinds of curriculum that works better in this environment. They really had to learn quite a bit. And so this last summer was the first summer I've been a school head where we've had a significant series of faculty meetings and significant sort of to-dos in between those meetings, which is a big deal. And I think allowed us to open in really good shape in terms of how we're teaching our kids in this in this environment. And so we made some great progress in that regard, and our teachers are really off to, I mean, it's not even a start anymore. They're doing a great job. The thing we found for teachers that is the biggest difference teaching in this particular environment, where, especially with fully remote or parallel remote, is that everything takes more steps. So, you know, the thing you used to do that took 3 steps now takes 6. The thing that was 4 steps now takes 8. And so it's just more work to do things that you used to do with far fewer steps. And that's tough on teachers. It really is, because teachers do a lot. So it's not 1 or 2 things that have a few more steps. It's dozens and dozens of things. Our teachers have done a great job, and really we owe them an incredible debt of gratitude. So now we've been on campus for 12 weeks, and it's awesome. Things are going incredibly well. We're worried about the surge that's going on nationwide and around us. But as things happen, we're sticking with our reopening plan. We've got protocols in there. We've got responses and communications that we employ, you know, when we do have a positive test or when we do have a close contact in the community, and we're just sticking with that. You know, we put together a really good plan, and we're sticking with that. And as long as it is safe and reasonable to stay open, we will. And as long as it's reasonable and safe to stay open for 5 days a week, we will. There's no doubt about that. It's good for kids to be together. The thing that I have loved to see about the fall on this campus is that there has been no change in terms of the joy and the fun and the energy and the enthusiasm and the passion that our students bring to campus or to their parallel experience every single day. It's just wonderful to see them. And the same for the teachers. They bring all of that as well. And so even though things feel so different, even though people are wearing masks and staying apart in the hallways and doing all the things that we have to do, the basic essence, the feel, the soul of school and school activities and kids is it's all the same. And it's great for us to be able to see, and certainly motivates us on a regular basis to continue doing the work that we're doing. So we've had quite a time over the last 8 months. As I'm recording this, there's a lot on the news about two vaccines that seem more than promising, seem to be just great vaccines, and so at some point soon those will start to be distributed, although there's a lot of concern about the mechanisms for distribution, but it'll happen. And so we're starting to feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and maybe we'll be able to start to have some soccer games and some choir productions and some drama productions and some things that get us a little bit closer. Again, for now, if you want to listen to kids sing, you can go outside and hear their voices sort of singing across the hillside. Okay, that's about my 15 minutes. Thank you so much, and signing off.